Simone Archer stared at the embossed invitation lying on her desk, its cream-colored paper practically glowing under the fluorescent lights of her cramped office. The Metropolitan Business Summit. Black tie. The Plaza Hotel. 3 days away. She picked it up for the 5th time that hour, running her thumb over the raised gold lettering. 6 months ago, she'd been hustling for clients from a coffee shop, her office consisting of a laptop and whatever table she could claim for a few hours. Now, after securing the Hastings Corporation accounted deal worth $3 million, she had an actual office. Small? Yes. With a radiator that clanked like a prisoner trying to escape. But it was hers. You're going, right? Her assistant Jamie poked their head through the doorway, eyebrows raised expectantly. I don't know, Simone admitted, setting the invitation down. This isn't really my world, it is now, Jamie said firmly. You earned this, Sim. Stop acting like you snuck in through the back door. But that was exactly how it felt. Simone had grown up in Queens, raised by her grandmother after her parents died in a car accident when she was 8. Rosa Archer had worked 3 jobs to keep their small apartment, to make sure Simone had books and school supplies and a chance at something better. There had been no country clubs, no prep schools, no summers in the Hamptons, just hard work, sacrifice, and a fierce determination to prove that talent mattered more than a trust fund. What do I even wear to something like this? Simone muttered. Jamie grinned. Leave that to me. The ballroom of Wolves, the Plaza Hotel ballroom, glittered like something from another century. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across marble floors. And everywhere Simone looked, she saw wealth. Designer gowns, diamond jewelry, watches that cost more than her yearly rent. The men wore tuxedos with the casual ease of people who attended events like this every week. The women moved like graceful predators, air-kissing and laughing with practiced charm. Simone smoothed down the emerald dress. Jamie had somehow borrowed from a friend who worked in fashion, tailored to fit her curves perfectly. She'd swept her dark curls into an elegant updo, applied makeup with a steadier hand than she felt, and walked into this world like she belonged. Fake it till you make it, she thought, accepting a champagne flute from a passing waiter. Simone Archer? A voice made her turn. Thomas Hastings, her client, approached with a warm smile. I'm so glad you came. There are several people I want you to meet. Relief flooded through her. At least she had one ally here. Thomas guided her through the crowd, making introductions. Corporate executives, hedge fund managers, entrepreneurs who'd built empires. Simone smiled, shook hands, exchanged pleasantries, and tried not to feel like an imposter among royalty. Then she saw him, the man who had. Everything Julian Hawthorne stood near the bar, surrounded by a small circle of admirers. He was tall, probably 6'3", with dark blonde hair styled with calculated casualness and sharp blue eyes that seemed to assess and dismiss everyone in his line of sight. His tuxedo was impeccable, custom-tailored to emphasize broad shoulders and a lean frame. Everything about him screamed money, power, privilege. That's Julian Hawthorne, Thomas said quietly, following her gaze. Runs Hawthorne Technologies. 34, worth about $8 billion, give or take. Brilliant, but ... double quotes. He trailed off diplomatically. But what? Let's just say he believes his own press releases. Simone watched as Julian laughed at something, the sound carrying across the room with the confidence of someone who'd never doubted his place in the world. A woman in a gold gown touched his arm, leaning close to whisper something. He barely glanced at her, his attention already moving elsewhere. He inherited the company from his father, Thomas continued. Expanded it, certainly, but he started on third base and acts like he hit a triple. Something about Julian Hawthorne irritated Simone instantly. Maybe it was the way he held himself, like gravity worked differently for him. Maybe it was the dismissive glance he gave a waiter who approached with a tray. Or maybe it was just that he represented everything she'd fought against her entire life, the assumption that success was a birthright rather than something earned. Come on, Thomas said. I'll introduce you. Oh, that's not necessary. But Thomas was already moving, and Simone had no choice but to follow. The collision, Julian. Thomas extended his hand. Good to see you. Julian turned, his expression polite but cool. Thomas, how's the campaign going? Brilliantly, thanks to my new strategist.
Molly.
Thomas gestured to Simone. Julian Hawthorne meets Simone Archer. She's the one who landed us the Hastings account. Julian's blue eyes swept over her, a quick assessment that made Simone's skin prickle. Impressive, he said, though his tone suggested otherwise. He extended his hand. Any relation to the Archers from Connecticut? No, Simone said, shaking his hand briefly. His grip was firm, confident. Queens, actually. Ah, that single syllable carried volumes. Well, congratulations on your success. Something in his tone that faint condescension. That barely hidden assumption that she'd gotten lucky made anger spark in Simone's chest. Thank you, she said evenly. It's amazing what you can accomplish when you actually have to work for it. The words hung in the air between them. Thomas coughed. The woman in the gold gown stared. Julian's eyes narrowed, focusing on Simone with sudden, sharp interest. Excuse me? His voice was dangerously soft. Simone knew she should back down, apologize, laugh it off as a joke. This man was a billionaire, connected to everyone who mattered in this room. Making an enemy of him was professional suicide, but she was so tired. Tired of rooms full of people who'd been handed everything, who looked at people like her grandmother and saw servants rather than humans. Tired of pretending that wealth equaled worth. I just mean, she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart, that there's a difference between building something from nothing and expanding something you inherited. Both take skill, certainly, but only one requires you to bet everything on yourself. The small group around them had gone silent. Julian stared at her, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly he smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. How refreshing, he said. Someone who thinks inheritance negates accomplishment. Tell me, Miss Archer, do you also believe that starting with advantages somehow makes success less valid? I believe, Simone said quietly, that people who've never worried about rent or food or keeping the lights on shouldn't lecture others about hard work. And I believe, Julian countered, his voice like silk over steel, that people who confuse struggle with virtue are simply justifying their own limitations.
Oh.
The words hit like a slap. Simone felt her face flush, anger and humiliation warring in her chest. Well, she said, setting her champagne glass on a nearby table, it's been enlightening, Mr. Hawthorne. Enjoy your evening. She turned and walked away, her head high, her hands trembling. Behind her, she heard Thomas apologizing, heard the murmur of conversation resuming. But all she could feel was Julian Hawthorne's eyes on her back. Watching her retreat, she'd just made an enemy of one of the most powerful men in New York, and somewhere deep inside, beneath the anger and embarrassment, she felt something else entirely. She felt alive. Simone woke to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Her heart sank as she scrolled through them, each one a variation of the same theme. What happened at the gala? Did you really insult Julian Hawthorne? Are you insane? She groaned and pulled the pillow over her face. In the cold light of morning, last night's boldness felt less like courage and more like career suicide. She'd confronted a billionaire at a black tie event, essentially calling him spoiled in front of his peers. What had she been thinking? Her phone buzzed again. Jamie. Please tell me the rumors are exaggerated, her assistant said without preamble. It depends on the rumor, Simone muttered, dragging herself out of bed. That you told Julian Hawthorne he didn't deserve his success because he inherited his company. I didn't say he didn't deserve it. I said there's a difference between. Simone stopped, sighing. Yeah, okay, that's pretty much what happened. Jamie was silent for a long moment. Well, at least you'll be memorable. That's what I'm afraid of. But when Simone arrived at her office 2 hours later, she found something unexpected waiting on her desk. A file folder with the Hawthorne Technologies logo embossed on the front. Inside was a proposal. Julian Hawthorne was requesting a consultation for a new product launch. At the bottom, in sharp, masculine handwriting, let's see if you're as good as you think you are. JH, the challenge, this has to be a joke, Simone said, staring at the proposal. The consultation fee alone was more than she'd make in 6 months. Or a test, Jamie suggested, reading over her shoulder. Maybe he wants to prove you wrong. Or humiliate me publicly. Simone chewed her lip. Every instinct told her to refuse, to avoid Julian Hawthorne and his games. But another part of Hertha, part that had clawed her way out of poverty through sheer determination, saw an opportunity. If she could land Hawthorne Technologies as a client, it would legitimize her business in ways the Hastings account never could. Every door in New York would open to her, and if Julian wanted to prove her wrong, well, she'd prove him wrong right back. Set up the meeting. She told Jamie, the tower Hawthorne Technologies occupied the top 15 floors of a glass tower in Midtown. Simone stood in the lobby, craning her neck to look up at the soaring atrium. The waterfall feature, the modern art installations that probably cost more than her entire building. Everything here screamed success, innovation, power. The elevator ride to the 52nd floor felt like ascending to Olympus. When the doors opened, a receptionist with a perfect smile directed her to a conference room with floor 2 ceiling windows. Overlooking Central Park, Julian was already there, standing at the windows with his hands in his pockets. He'd traded the tuxedo for a charcoal suit that fit him like a second skin. When he turned, his expression was unreadable. Miss Archer, he said. Punctual. I appreciate that, Mr. Hawthorne. Simone set her portfolio on the table, refusing to be intimidated by the view or the man. Thank you for the opportunity. Don't thank me yet. He moved to the table, gesturing for her to sit. I'm not easy to impress. Neither am I, she countered. Meeting his gaze steadily, something flickered in his blue eyes. Amusement, maybe, or respect. He sat across from her, leaning back with casual authority. Tell me about the Hastings campaign. For the next hour, Simone walked him through her strategy, her research, her execution. She explained how she'd identified the target demographic, crafted messaging that resonated, leveraged social media influencers while maintaining brand integrity. Julian listened without interrupting, his expression neutral, occasionally jotting notes. When she finished, silence filled the room. Competent, Julian finally said. Simone's jaw tightened. Competent? The strategy was sound. The execution was adequate. But there's nothing here that any decent firm couldn't have done. He leaned forward, his eyes sharp. You want to prove you're better than me? Than everyone who started with advantages? Then show me something I haven't seen before. Show me genius, not just competence. Anger flared hot in Simone's chest. You brought me here to insult my work. I brought you here to see if you could back up your bold statements with bold ideas. Julian stood, moving to the windows. You think I don't know what people say about me? That I was born on third base? That I inherited everything? You're right. I did have advantages. My father built this company, and I expanded it. But do you know why I expanded it? He turned to face her, and for the first time, she saw something raw beneath his polished exterior. Nice. Because everyone expected me to fail. Every board member, every investor, every journalist waiting to write the story of the spoiled heir who crashed his father's legacy. I had to be twice as good, twice as ruthless, just to be taken seriously. So don't tell me I don't understand pressure, Miss Archer. I've lived with it my entire life. Simone stood slowly, her anger transforming into something more complex. Then you should understand that some of us don't get the luxury of failure. When I mess up, there's no trust fund to catch me. No family connections to make a phone call and fix things. Every decision I make is a bet on myself that I can't afford to lose. They stared at each other across the conference room, the tension thick enough to cut. So here's my bold idea. Mr. Hawthorne, Simone continued, her voice steady. You want a campaign that breaks through? Stop trying to prove you deserve your success. Stop trying to convince people you're more than your father's son. Instead, own it. Own every advantage you've had and use them to do something that matters. Build something that helps people who didn't start where you did. That's how you change the narrative. Julian was silent for a long moment, his eyes searching her face. You're serious. Completely. It's commercial suicide. Our shareholders would revolt. If your shareholders want growth and good press, A genuine corporate responsibility initiative would give them both. Simone grabbed her portfolio. But if you just wanted someone to tell you what you want to hear, you hired the wrong person. She headed for the door, her heart pounding. Miss Archer. Julian's voice stopped her at the threshold. When she turned, he was smiling. A real smile this time, not the practiced one from the gala. You're hired. Full campaign, 6-month contract. My assistant will send over the paperwork. What? You were right at the gala. About me. About people like me. And I hate that you were right. He moved toward her, stopping just close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. So prove it. Show me how someone who built themselves from nothing does things differently. Teach me something, Simone Archer. The way he said her name soft, almost wondering sent an unexpected shiver down her spine. This isn't a game to me, she said quietly. Good, Julian replied. Because it's not a game to me either. Not anymore. 3 weeks into the campaign, Simone had transformed a conference room at Hawthorne Technologies into her war room. Whiteboards covered in strategies lined the walls. Sample designs littered the table, and coffee cups created a small mountain near the sink. She'd been working 16-hour days, barely sleeping, determined to prove that her bold words could translate into bold results. Julian appeared in the doorway at 9 in the evening, loosening his tie. Still here? Where else would I be? Simone didn't look up from her laptop where she was fine-tuning the messaging for their new initiative, TechBridge, a program that would provide free technology training and equipment to underprivileged communities, home, asleep, like normal people. He entered the room, surveying her organized chaos with something like admiration. You know I'm paying you enough to hire a team, right? I have a team. But this part, the core strategy, needs to come from someone who understands what we're trying to do. She finally looked up at him. You can't fake authenticity, Julian. People can smell corporate pandering a mile away. He'd asked her to call him Julian after the first week. Said Mr. Hawthorne made him feel like his father. She'd noticed he never talked about his father much. Despite the man's legendary status in the tech world, show me what you have, he said. Pulling up a chair beside her, Simone walked him through the revised campaign. Instead of the typical corporate responsibility announcement, they would launch with a documentary-style video featuring real people from communities that lacked access to technology. No actors, no scripts, just honest stories about barriers and dreams. Then they'd follow it with concrete action. 10 community centers in underserved neighborhoods, equipped with computers, internet, and trained instructors. Hawthorne Technologies employees would volunteer as mentors. It's not about you being a savior, Simone explained. It's about you using your resources to create opportunities. You provide the tools and the knowledge. They do the rest. Julian was quiet, studying the mock-up she'd created. This is going to cost us $20 million in the first year alone. Yes, the board will fight me on this. Probably. Every critic who ever said I was just playing at business will have proof. He looked at her, his blue eyes intense. You're asking me to bet my reputation on your vision. No, Simone said softly. I'm asking you to bet on doing the right thing. There's a difference. Something shifted in Julian's expression. He reached out, his fingers brushing hers where they rested on the table. The touch was brief, electric, gone almost before she could register it. But her skin tingled where he'd made contact, and her breath caught in her throat. Why do you care so much? He asked quietly. This is just a job. You could have created a safe campaign, collected your fee, and moved on. Simone thought of her grandmother working 3 jobs so she could have a chance. Thought of the library in Queens where she'd spent countless hours because they had heat, and books and a computer she could use. Thought of every scholarship application, every rejection, every door that stayed closed because she didn't have the right last name or the right connections, because I was one of those kids, she said. The ones without access, without resources. And if someone like you had created something like TechBridge when I was 15, maybe I wouldn't have had to fight so hard just to get to the starting line.
Ow.
Julian's hand covered hers fully this time, warm and solid. I'm sorry for what? For not seeing it sooner? For being so wrapped up in proving myself that I forgot why any of this matters?" He laughed, a sound without humor. "You know what's ironic? I've spent my whole life trying to be different from my father, but I became exactly like him. Focused on profits and prestige, forgetting that we're supposed to be building something that improves people's lives." "You're not him," Simone said, and she realized she meant it. Over the past 3 weeks, she'd seen beyond Julian's polished exterior. Seen him stay late reviewing proposals, seen him ask thoughtful questions about implementation, seen the way his face lit up when she explained how TechBridge could change lives. You're willing to listen. To change. That's something. Their faces were close now, the conference room feeling suddenly smaller. Julian's thumb traced circles on the back of her hand, and Simone's heart hammered against her ribs. "Simone," he said, her name a question and a confession all at once. The door burst open. A woman in an impeccable white suit strode in, her dark hair pulled back in a severe bun, her expression carved from ice. Simone recognized her from the news. Diana Hawthorne, Julian's mother, current chairwoman of the board. Julian dropped Simone's hand and stood. "Mother, I wasn't expecting you." Clearly. Diana's cold gaze swept over Simone, dismissing her in an instant before focusing on her son. "We need to talk privately." "Anything you need to say, you can say in front of Simone. She's heading the new campaign." "Yes, I've heard about this campaign. This fantasy project that will drain resources and accomplish nothing." Diana picked up one of Simone's mock-ups, studying it with obvious distaste. "TechBridge. How noble. How naive." "It's neither," Simone said, standing to face her. "It's strategic. The publicity alone while I wasn't speaking to you." Diana's voice could have frozen fire. "Julian, the board meets tomorrow. They're prepared to vote against this initiative unless you can provide concrete projections showing profitability within 2 years. It's not about profitability. Everything is about profitability." Diana's composure cracked, revealing the steel beneath. "Do you think your father built this company on sentiment? He made hard decisions. He understood that business requires ruthlessness, not charity. And he also died alone," Julian said quietly in an office, reviewing quarterly reports. "Is that the legacy you want me to continue?" Silence filled the room. Diana's face went pale, then flushed with anger. "How dare you? I dare because I'm done living his life. Done building his company his way." Julian moved to stand beside Simone, a united front. "TechBridge is happening. With or without the board's approval." Diana stared at her son, something complicated moving behind her eyes. Pain, maybe, or disappointment. "She's changed you," she said finally, her gaze cutting to Simone. "This girl from nowhere with her idealistic fantasies?" "No," Julian said. "She reminded me who I wanted to be before I learned to be what everyone expected." Diana was silent for a long moment. Then she set down the mock-up carefully, precisely. "The board votes at noon tomorrow. If you proceed with this against their wishes, they'll move to replace you as CEO. I won't be able to stop them, I know." "You're willing to lose everything for this?" Julian looked at Simone, his expression open, vulnerable in a way she'd never seen from him. "Yeah, I think I am." The resolution, the board meeting, was a massacre. Simone watched from the back of the room as Julian presented TechBridge, his voice steady, his conviction clear. The board members listened with skepticism, interrupted with concerns about costs and risks, pointed out the safer alternatives. Diana sat at the head of the table, her expression unreadable. When Julian finished, the room erupted in debate. Simone wanted to intervene, to defend the campaign she'd built, but this wasn't her fight. This was Julian's choice, his stand. Finally, Diana raised her hand for silence. "My son is proposing we bet $20 million on sentiment," she said. "He wants to prioritize social impact over shareholder value. He's asking us to trust that doing good will somehow translate to doing well." She paused, her gaze moving around the table. "And I think we should approve it." Gasps filled the room. Julian stared at his mother in shock. "Not because I've suddenly become soft," Diana continued, "but because I've watched my son these past weeks become the leader his father always hoped he'd be. Someone willing to take risks. someone who sees beyond the next quarter. We built this company to innovate, to push boundaries. Maybe it's time we remembered that innovation isn't just about technology. It's about how we use it.
Ow?
He asked simply. Diana looked at him for a long moment, and Simone saw something soften in her face. Because your father would have been proud, she said quietly. Not of the campaign, but of you finally becoming your own man? She glanced at Simone. Take care of him, Miss Archer. God knows he needs someone who isn't afraid to challenge him. She walked away, leaving Julian and Simone alone. So Simone said, smiling. You just bet your career on my idea. Our idea, Julian corrected. He took her hand, lacing their fingers together. And I'd do it again, even though I called you spoiled. Especially because you called me spoiled. Someone needed to. He pulled her closer. Simone Archer, you walked into my life and destroyed every assumption I had about myself and what matters. You're infuriating and brilliant, and you make me want to be better than I am. Julian Hawthorne, she replied. Her heart full. You're arrogant and privileged and somehow, despite everything, one of the best men I've ever known. He kissed her then. Soft and sure, and Simone felt something click into place. This wasn't about wealth or status or proving anything to anyone. This was about two people who challenged each other, changed each other, made each other better. When they broke apart, Julian grinned. So, what's our next campaign? Simone laughed. Let's finish this one first. Where's the fun in that? And as they walked out of Hawthorne Technologies together, Simone realized that one bold sentence had done more than humble a billionaire. It had opened both their eyes to what really mattered, not the money you inherited or the struggles you overcame, but what you chose to build with whatever you were given. 6 months later, TechBridge opened its first 10 community centers. The program became a model for corporate responsibility nationwide, and Simone Archer married Julian Hawthorne in a small ceremony in Queens. With her grandmother as maid of honor and a reception at the community center where Simone had first learned to code, some love stories start with sparks. This one started with truth.